Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the West Business Development Center. My name is Kelly Geiser, and I'm the event coordinator here at West, hosting today's webinar, ABCs of Slack for your remote workforce. West is a nonprofit funded by the federal SBA Small Business Administration Program. We are both a women's business center and small business development center for Mendocino and Lake County. Through federal and state agencies matched with local community contributions, it is your tax dollars and your contributions that allow us to provide our services to you for free. These services include one-on-one counseling, work webinars, loan package readiness, and advising to small business owners and entrepreneurs at every stage of business development. We also have a pool of expert advisors that cover niche business needs from permitting to HR and e-commerce. If you'd like to learn more about becoming a West client, please visit our website or give our office a call. Just a quick disclaimer that today's webinar is for informational and educational purposes only. You can read it in more detail on our website. And without further ado, I'm so pleased to introduce Tom Jacobson for today's webinar, ABCs of Slack.
Hi, everybody. This is Tom. Glad to be here with you and excited to talk with everyone about Slack. A little bit about me. I'm not just a presenter for West Center, but I'm also a former client. So when I was starting my online cybersecurity business, I looked to West Center for guidance and got some really expert assistance, all free of charge. So if you're not familiar with West Center's offerings, there are many, many offerings. I would encourage you to take a look. Really wonderful people and really wonderful services that they offer. Let's just jump right in to Slack. And I don't know if some of you have heard about Slack or maybe even tried it, or if you've never even seen it before. Either way, hopefully there's something new that you'll learn today. And we're going to look at Slack as maybe a new way to work. And we'll see what we mean by that in just a few minutes. Now, this is the way that Slack talks about it. And this is straight off of their website. So they have every reason to lie to you, right? They want you to pay for a subscription to Slack for your organization, for your business, for yourself. So what they're trying to really express here is that maybe there's a new way to do the things that we've normally been doing. And if we think about our digital life at work, a lot of it seems like it's kind of glued together from different parts. And the cornerstone for most of us, for better or worse, is email, right? Most of our work life seems to revolve around email, for better or worse. So Slack is maybe an alternative to that, a different way to look at how we communicate both internally and externally with our company. Now, is email going away? No, not not anytime soon. But Slack is a different paradigm than email. So it can be a little hard to understand. And I'm going to try to use some metaphors and examples from other programs that maybe you have worked with in the past or in your personal life to see if we can help understand what it is. But this is what Slack is calling the digital headquarters. Right? A different way for you to organize your business and your workers, especially around remote work. Okay, so let's get in. How do we actually use Slack? What does it mean? Well, first thing you have to do is sign up with an account, subscription, free account, and then just dive in and start using it. And with Slack, you can use it on any device. So whether you're on a desktop, a PC, a Mac, iPhone, an Android phone, Slack works on all of those different platforms. And the heart of Slack is messaging. And if you've ever used things like Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp, then Slack will seem very familiar to you in terms of using the chat. So we're all used to this direct messages. And there's also this thing called a channel. And again, to go back to Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, a channel is basically a group. So for work, a channel might be marketing, right? If there's a marketing team, a sales team, IT team, let's say volunteers, if we're running a nonprofit and we have volunteers that we need to coordinate, you could have a volunteers channel. And so what happens, instead of sending a message one-to-one, let's say you have 10 volunteers for an upcoming event, you create a channel in Slack called volunteers, or maybe even specific to the actual event, the fundraiser, Volunteers for Fundraiser 2022. And then you will actually send out one message and everybody in that channel will get anything you broadcast. And it's not just text. We'll look at this in a little bit, some other things that you can send through these messages. But again, just like through Messenger or WhatsApp or any of these other direct message platforms, you're not just sending text. You can send video, you can send audio, you can send emojis, and you can also send links and files, which for work is very, very important. So it's kind of an all-in-one communication channel. And this is really the heart of Slack. And we'll look at this a little bit more. So here's an example. This is what a direct message screen would look like, right? And even though you can create channels, you can also send direct messages to more than one person at a time. So what's the difference? Well, it's kind of like if you've done the chat on your cell phone using SMS messages, right? Text messages on your cell phone, you can link in more than one person. And that's kind of what this is in the direct message model. And it's very easy. You just pop open a window and start typing, and people get this instantly. Kind of a funny story. Well, I think it's funny. Back in the day when I worked in the .com, the late 90s and .coms, we had a big room full of engineers and web people, and we were all working together in the same room. It was a big open floor plan, giant room. We all had our desk and we had our computer. And did we get up and, if we needed to talk to someone, did we walk over 10 feet to talk to that person? No, we used direct messages. At that point, we were using Yahoo Instant Messenger, if you can believe that. But very similar functionality. It's been around for a long time. And so we would send messages back and forth. And for some things, for keeping your train of consciousness, your flow that you're in, it can be very useful to just fire off a message, get a response back. What was the link to that document? Oh yeah, here it is, boom. As opposed to taking, 5-10 minutes out of your time to go find somebody, call them on the phone. So it's a different paradigm for working, and it may be a little foreign to some of us who are used to more of the water cooler kind of approach to working. Now, again, this is kind of a deep dive into what the message looks like. I would encourage you, if you're interested in Slack, to just try it. It's free to sign up and you can install the app. It's very easy to uninstall the app if you're just doing it on your phone. And while it might not seem like much fun to chat with yourself, right, if you're the only person on the chat, you will get it very quickly a sense for what the app provides, the kinds of things that you can do. So here's an imaginary chat. Just wanted to check in on the status of this grant application deadline. And of course I included an emoji because how can you possibly communicate without emojis? And you can see at the bottom here, there are a lot of different options that you can attach a file, you can mention somebody, right? And this is kind of like a hashtag. If any of you are familiar with Twitter, Instagram, Facebook does this, essentially a hashtag. So if somebody is responsible for something, let's say a cleanup, at the event that we're scheduling, our imaginary event, then you can say, hey, we're going to need some folks to clean up, and then do the mention for maybe the coordinator, the lead person who's coordinating the cleanup, to make sure that they notice it. Now, there are a couple of other interesting buttons in here as well. There's an audio and a video clip. And this is pretty amazing because it's all integrated. So some of us, we don't like all the typing, especially on the phone. Maybe that's hard. Even on the laptop, you just want to see somebody and talk to somebody. You can do an audio chat with the person if they're online. You hit that button, and then the two of you are talking just as if you were on the phone. You can do a video chat just like Zoom. So imagine, instead of having to, go to Zoom, set up a meeting room, copy the link out, copy the invitation, email the invitation to somebody, right? And then have them accept it. You can imagine how much time this takes. Boom, you just hit that button and they get a notice, hey, Tom wants to do a video chat with you. Okay, let's do it. So it's much more immediate, I guess is one way to put it, than maybe traditional email approaches to doing these things. And it's not rocket science. There's no really new technology in here. There are things that have already been around for a long time, and they're being wrapped up in one convenient package. And it is very convenient to have all these things together. So could you do all of this with email, with Zoom, with something like Dropbox? Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, all of the individual features are found. And as you'll see later in the presentation, there are obviously competitors to Slack, the two big ones being Google and Microsoft, who are including a lot of these kinds of features as well. But Slack is very, very popular, and there's a reason for that. So if you're thinking about a different way to communicate in your organization, maybe not across the whole organization, maybe you have a group that would benefit from this kind of more instant online communication. Maybe it's a group that's working remotely more of the time. Slack is perfect for that. Okay, here's an example of what files look like in the direct message. And this is super useful. So if somebody has sent me a file, instead of looking around on a network drive, a cloud drive, I can just do a search in that chat and find the file that I'm looking for, right? And then start working on it, print it out, whatever it is that I need to do. You can also do reactions, just like in social media. You can inline the files as you see here. Here's a PDF that's inline, and the search works really well. And I use Outlook for work every day, and I'm always frustrated by how long it takes me to find messages in Outlook, right? And it's not because of the volume of email that I have. That the search in Outlook is just not great, right? Works a little better in the web version, but that's a little less convenient. The fact is the search in Slack works really, really well, right? So if you have something in there, you can search by types, you can search by all sorts of different parameters. And I was just playing around with this yesterday. It works really, really well. So anything that's in Slack is easily findable in Slack. So you're going to cut down on time spent just searching for things, right? The digital filing cabinet, which seems like it's out of control, a situation that a lot of us have. Okay, so that was one mode of communication, the direct message. And here's another one, the channels, which again are analogous to groups in other applications like Messenger, WhatsApp, things like that. And here in the picture, you can see there are 3 sample channels: the design team, the help IT, and marketing team. And so you can add people to these channels. You can share documents, you can do video chats. It's kind of like an email thread, only maybe better, right? In some ways, it's very different from email, kind of the visceral experience of this, especially if your team is online and everybody's using Slack. And some of my clients do use Slack, and I've just asked one of them last week, like, well, what's your experience with it? And this person said, I love it. Everybody's online. If I need something, it's right there. This person uses it on their phone as well as on their work computer, right? And sometimes even when they're in their office, they're doing stuff on the phone because it's just faster. They're getting up to do something else and they remember something, boom. So it's very, very instantaneous. And again, you can include all sorts of PDFs, Word files. You can create a channel for a specific project, not just a group of people, anything that you have in mind, right? So there's a deadline coming up for, again, a grant application, or some kind of vendor information needs renewing, right? Some kind of certification process, whatever it is, you can create a channel just for that, add people to it, assign deadlines for it, calendar events. You can link in documents, make sure people are working on the right versions of the documents. So it really ties into their own cloud storage system. Now, if you're using this to edit Word documents, PDFs, things like that, Excel sheets, you are going to have to tie into Microsoft Office, or if you're on Google Workspace, you can tie it into the Google Docs as well. So that's all supported through a number of different apps that fit into this app, sub apps that help you with your app. Okay, so here we go. This is kind of what it looks like, showing the search. And just, like I said, I'm searching for anything that has my name in it. And you can see the little @ sign search. And you can see I've reacted to things, little eyeballs. It's just nice. You get this kind of instant feedback from people in your team about what's going on, which is very different from email. Email can feel a little more cold, impersonal, sometimes harder to tell how things land, right? When you're sending off that email. Very different feel with Slack. And that can be important. Just kind of the whole feel of it may make a difference for your organization. Oh, good, more search. So here, and look, one of the first options, like this is so useful, find indirect messages with yourself. So you can actually send yourself notes, right, as a kind of storage. So if there are things you don't want to forget, files that you're using all the time, you can send them to yourself and then very easily search for those with the click of a button, which is very, very useful. I call it file in plain sight. You can't see my desk, thankfully, but it's not that clean. But you can create basically a storage silo for yourself in a Slack channel to yourself. But again, you can easily search by just clicking a button: messages, files, channels, right? Oh, I think this was in the marketing group channel. Boom. Oh, I think I sent this to my boss. Boom. Hit the people channel. Super easy. And then things pop up for you right there. If you're used to when you're typing in, for example, Google or Bing doing a search and the auto completion, it's showing stuff for you as you're typing, it has that feel to it. It's very, very instantaneous. And like I said, in contrast with Microsoft, it works really, really well for the search. Now, there's another kind of metaphor that they're using here called the huddle. This is something else you get with the paid plans. So you'll have to actually try out a paid plan in order to do a huddle. But it's basically like a small, maybe more instantaneous, spontaneous meeting, either a video meeting or audio meeting, but with an online component where people are sharing things in real time, sharing documents, doing things like that. So let's say, I'm the boss. It's like, oh my gosh, this just came up. We need to deal with this crisis that just showed up. I need, so and so and this person to be in there. And boom, we do a huddle. And all of a sudden, like, well, here's the problem. What are we going to do? Oh, okay, here's a document that we have that maybe we could send this to the client. So you're actually collaborating in real time using video, audio, sharing files, instant message, whatever you need through Slack. So a very powerful feature. And again, much more spontaneous, right? This isn't the, everybody in the conference room in 15 minutes kind of thing. This is, let's do this right now. And it can also be useful for solving problems like, oh, I'm working on the website and it just isn't working and I need some help. Well, instead of wandering over to find the web person, or maybe they're in a different building, maybe they're in a different city, you can do one of these huddles and get people working right away. Now, an important thing to mention about Slack is that you can connect it to people outside of your organization, right? A lot of organizations don't do this, and it really depends on how your organization is set up, but it is possible through something called Slack Connect. And so if you have third-party vendors that you're working with and they're on Slack, you can work with them essentially as if they're right there in the office with you, which is very, very powerful. Now there are some like with most things, pluses and minuses about that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that soon. But I just wanted to kind of go over the huddle. Oh, here we go, Slack Connect. This is great. So again, let's say you have a third-party marketing agency or website developer that you're working with on your new corporate website, your new organization website. If those folks are on Slack, through this Slack Connect feature, which is again only available through a paid plan, you're able to work with them remotely, just as if they're right there in the office with you. You can do the huddles, you can do video, you can do audio, share files securely, right? Instead of having to figure out like, well, how do I share things in Dropbox externally? And what do I do with those links? Do I email them? Do I send them some other way? What's the right way to set this up? It's all built in. And it makes it very, very easy. So you're essentially connecting to a third-party group, and then you can send messages to people in that group, and they can send it to you as well. Now, the last bullet point here is pretty important, and one of the benefits that people get from using Slack is that they are much more resistant to email phishing attacks. And I've just unfortunately had a client who lost some money in essentially a business email compromise scam, a payroll scam, where they were tricked into changing some account information based on an email that they got. And one of the nice things about Slack is that if you're connecting it just with your own organization, or maybe just with one or two other companies that you're working with, you're much more resistant to those kinds of attacks because you're not going to get anything from anyone who's not inside your company. So someone creating an email address that's very similar to your organization, they call that typo squatting, right? So instead of Amazon.com, it's AMAZ number, the zero, right? And .com, things like that. That's an obvious example, but it can be very hard in email to tell if the person that you're dealing with is really who you think it is. With Slack, because it's connected for the whole enterprise, you have a much higher assurance that you're talking to the right person. So it actually does reduce your institutional exposure to phishing. Now, of course, you're not going to completely replace email, But it is a more secure, more direct way of working with people than just doing things through email, especially if your organization maybe isn't technologically as mature as it could be. If you're not using Office 365 or Google Workspace, for example, if you're using more local email providers, it can be almost impossible to assure that the only people who have access to your employees' emails are the employees. I've done a lot of cybersecurity webinars that talk more in depth. I'm not going to go into that more here, but just something to think about. If security is top of mind for you, definitely worth checking out Slack for that point. And I mentioned earlier, it works on multiple different platforms. I love this photo. You got to add some caffeine to your workday, of course, which I've done earlier, a local coffee shop. It actually does work the same on the desktop, the laptop, and your smartphone. And I can attest to this. I use Slack as the primary means of communication with one of my clients, and I do use it both on a laptop and a smartphone. And it works the same on both, and it works really well. It provides more of that 24/7 availability. Um, for example, when this phishing attack happened a few days ago, I decided to notify some of my other clients to be on the lookout for this kind of thing. And one of my clients is on Slack, and I just fired off a quick message, sent a screenshot to remind them about, policies and procedures, and got an immediate feedback from the CEO. So, a very different way to work, but it really does work well on mobile devices. So I'd encourage you to check that out if you're a mobile first kind of user. Now, if you're on a paid plan, we talked about things like, oh, you can share files and whatnot. Well, what happens if you need to edit a file? And that's where you do these integrations with Google Drive, Office 365. You can see they're just a bewildering array of different things you can hook into, including calendars, which is great. You can think of Slack almost as an operating system. And that's kind of how I think about a lot of these big platforms, things like Facebook, Dropbox, um, Google. It's Salesforce. If any of you are using Salesforce for a CRM solution, they're really not programs or apps in a traditional sense. They really are an operating system or maybe even an ecosystem that lots of different things will fit into. So you can really create essentially a cloud first network for your organization through Slack that ties into, for example, Google Drive, Google Calendar, Google Docs, Google Sheets, right? To use the Google, and likewise for Microsoft, you can do all the PowerPoint, Excel, you name it, calendar. It can all be included in there and it can all work together. Now, is this easy and free to set up? Well, no, you have to learn about how to do it, or somebody in your organization is going to have to figure out kind of the IT side, but it's a little different than traditional IT, right? You're not installing servers in the basement and running wires. It's all cloud-based. But you do have to spend some time thinking about and configuring all of this stuff. And the help documents I found with Slack are very, very useful. There are a lot of examples. There are communities out there to help you get things working the way that you want and to see models of what other people are doing. So, again, it's not free or easy, but it's not traditional IT either. So could you do it yourself if you're more tech savvy? Probably, at least enough to get it started. And then, part of it is just fine tuning it as you go along. Like, oh, I see that, I use Calendly, for example, so that people can schedule time with me. They can put appointments on my calendar automatically. Can I, include that in Slack? Can I work with that so people can get notifications when a Calendly thing comes in? Yes, you can do that if you install the app, configure it, and whatnot. And so kind of go piece by piece. Don't think you're going to go in all at once and have a complete working Slack platform. But hopefully the basics are working for you, right? Like this is either going to work or it isn't. I'm not trying to pitch Slack. I don't endorse it. I'm not getting paid by them in any way. But it's a very, very useful tool for some people in some organizations. But really the only way to know is to try it out. So that's what I would encourage you to do. If you've been thinking about it, do give it a try. And I also wanted to talk about the competition, right? Speaking about that, not getting paid to endorse Slack. Two very popular competing platforms are Google and Microsoft. In this case, Microsoft Teams and Google Workspace. And I've done little screenshots here of what they look like. It's almost exactly the same. They just have a slightly different metaphor. And if you let Gmail do it, it will come out of the box configured to do a lot of the stuff that Slack does. And you'll see here, we've got chat, spaces, and meet, right? So remember the huddle? Well, that's kind of like spaces. You can create these little instantaneous rooms for people to share documents, video, audio, and whatnot. Meet, it's like Zoom, right? Let's do a meet. It can be more spontaneous. I can just start it up and invite people, and they can just join right away. Or I can send out through email, instant message, through Slack. And it's not either or with these two. I know organizations that very happily use Google Workspace and Slack at the same time. Are there redundancies? Yes. They just don't use the spaces, chat, and meet for Google Workspace. They do that on Slack, or maybe they use Zoom in addition. It is kind of a buffet model uh, out there. So you have to decide what works for you and what works for your team. But just wanted to put that out there. There are alternatives, and Microsoft Teams I've used as well. Sometimes I'll get an invite from a client. Let's meet on Microsoft Teams. So, okay, so I have that installed. And again, you can see there's chat, there's meet, you can set up channels, you can do direct messaging, you can share files. It all ties into OneDrive, obviously very well, but it also will tie into Google Workspace, into Google Drive too, right? So again, they're kind of like these ecosystems, and you can do more or less depending on what works for your organization. Okay, so now you're sold or not. How much is it going to cost me? Well, there is a free plan. It's good for getting started and checking it out. But if you're really going to use it for your business, you need to be paying monthly for it. And the Pro plan, if you pay on a yearly basis, is $725 a month per user. And the Business Plus plan is like an extra $525, so $1250 a month per user. So if you've got 10 people, it's going to add up, right? You're going to be in the thousands of dollars per year. But you do get some pretty good stuff. And Business Plus, you probably have to have a much bigger organization to really benefit from a lot of the things. But again, they're very clear, the comparisons. If you go to the Slack website, they will very clearly spell out for you what the pros and cons are of each plan. And you'll be able to figure out what's right for you. The unlimited message history that you see there is pretty important. On the free plan, you can only see the last 90 days of your messages. So they really get you on that. If you're using it, you're having a great time, and then all of a sudden, wait, where's that file that I uploaded? Oh, I'm on the free plan. Okay, time to upgrade. But again, I tell people that for any service, if you're using the service as part of your business, you need to be paying for it. There's no such thing as a free app anymore. There were kind of when the smartphone first came out, there were free apps, but if you're not paying for it, you are paying for it, you just don't know how. And for a business, in terms of keeping your information about your customers confidential, you don't want to not know how you're paying for that app. You want it to be upfront, very clear. I'm paying for this service. I own the data, and they're not going to be doing anything weird behind the scenes with it. So if you're using it for your business, you need to get in the habit of paying for it. And for some of us, that's a little hard because we're used to we bought the package, with the CD-ROMs in the store. We own it. We want to use it forever. Sorry, those days are over, and it's all about monthly subscription, annual subscription plans now. So we just have to take a deep breath and include that as part of our line item for IT every year in our business. Okay, I think that's it for my prepared talks. Hoping that people have some questions, or maybe you guys have tried using Slack, or you've used other competing systems. Maybe had some questions about pros and cons. I pretty much used all three of the systems that I talked about: Google Workspace, Microsoft Teams, and Slack. So hopefully, if you have some more specific questions, I'd be able to help answer those for you.
Thanks, Tom. While you guys are thinking of your question, if you don't mind taking a moment to fill out the poll that I've just launched. Your feedback is super important to us so that we can continue bringing Tom back for these webinars. Just want to say that here at West, we do use Slack for some of our members who are more familiar with internal communication. So I do like Slack. I think the only downside for me is that there's not a great use of channel versus group chats. And
Mm.
so I get the only downside is that sometimes when I'm too distracted, I click the wrong group chat because it's sorted by the very alphabetical first name, and so sometimes I'll click the wrong one because it's we have a staff member named Allison, and whenever she's in a group chat, she's the first name in all like
Oh,
four
okay, I get
or
it.
five
Okay.
group chats. And I have no way of
Yeah.
changing the group chat name to make sure I'm clicking the right one.
Oh my goodness. Oh, you have me curious now. I'm actually gonna boot up Slack on my phone here.
Hmm.
And this is something important is can you delete messages after you send them? And
Yes, in
that's not
Slack you can.
something that you can.
Yes, in Slack you can go back and edit the message as well as delete the message.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Got it. I'm
Yeah.
just trying to do it here. Oh yeah, I have delete message
Hmm. Yeah, and I
option.
do.
Okay.
And one pro is I mean, I don't use it very often, but if our whole team was probably more on Slack, I probably would be using the chat to myself a lot more for note taking. It is
Mm,
like a great
okay.
note taking system in a sense because whatever I
Yeah,
write in there, their search function is actually really good. The keywords
right?
I'm able to find pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting to hear how you guys use it.
Yeah, it's only half of our team. It's the
Yeah,
more
see
like
that's
younger people.
yeah, that's pretty common. I'm glad you mentioned that, Kelly, because there can be kind of a I don't know, generation gap, we'll call it. There's kind of more traditional email and phone versus instant messaging kind of ways of communicating.
Yeah.
But I've found that when people have switched over um, to things, the instant messaging, it can be very, very profound. And people often don't go back to the email model once they've been exposed to it and really had some hands on.
Yeah, on the personal side, my family we use Discord, which has a very similar structure to Slack, because there's
Yeah.
nine of us cousins in my generation, and
Hmm.
we would first had a group chat, but just the conversations were just so scattered that we went to
Yeah.
Discord and started the channels. So we have a channel for like pets and
Okay.
babies or travel,
Oh,
and
yeah.
our conversations have gotten a little more organized. And you're like, oh, okay, I
Oh,
know what
that's great.
topic we're talking about.
That's yeah, Discord again. I think of that more as for gamers. But
Hmm.
yeah, it works very similarly.
Yeah, the format is very similar to Slack. So
Yeah,
that's
and very,
another.
very powerful. Like I've seen some Discord rooms that are just crazy, the kinds of things that they can provide and talk about an ecosystem. It's wow. I've seen some crazy stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, but very, very similar metaphors, right? And similar
Hmm.
technologies.
Yeah, I have seen those servers on Discord, and it's overwhelming when there's hundreds of people
Yeah.
talking all at the same time. I ended up saying no thanks. This is not my mode
Yeah.
of communication in a large group.
I feel like nine cousins sounds overwhelming to me personally. So
I think that's why we needed the channels to be able to
exactly. Yeah.
organize our conversations when we're sporadically communicating with each other. But Slack works great for our team of, well, we have 9 staff members here at West, and I think about 5 of us are on it, and it works pretty well. All right. Well, if there's no questions, why don't we wrap up, Tom? Can you go to the next slide? Just a reminder that today's webinar was brought to you by a women's business center located here in Mendocino County. If you're not local to Mendocino, these are all the California women's business centers around California that can also provide you free business advice and help. If not, next slide, Tom. These are the Northern California SBDC offices. These are centers that also do the same exact thing, just seems a little more populated, and it's a national program. So if you're not local to California, please do search an SBDC center near you. They usually have a zip code finder on their webpage when you're looking for a center. And next slide. And thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Tom, for a great presentation. Thank you to the participants, and hope to see you all at our next webinar.